In this quick tip, I'll be sharing with you the new features that are found in Zoom related to polling and surveying. So we could always do polls previously in Zoom, but what's new now is that you can create a bank of polls and surveys that you can pull up for any meeting at any time. So let's start with the polls. So if we create a poll and quiz, we can create a new poll. So you have different question types. So matching, multiple choice, single choice, rank order. You also have kind of fill in the blank or short or long answers, or asking students for a rating scale. You can determine if questions are required or not. You can make it a quiz, so students get points based on their answers, if there's a correct answer or not. You can also decide whether or not you want the answers to be anonymous. So if you're just trying to get a feel of student basic understanding and a type of summative assessment or formative assessment, or if you're just trying to kind of read the room or basically conduct a survey, you might just take it to be anonymous. However, if you are trying to gauge individual student understanding or perhaps using this as a way to gauge student participation, you might leave this off so that you can see the student names in the final results. You can also create surveys. So I find the surveys not to be very useful. You can ask surveys during a meeting as well, just by making a quiz and making it not a quiz, right? So there's no right answer. It's essentially a survey. Um, the surveys, the really only useful thing is if you're kind of leading a workshop or something in which you want feedback at the end. And so in this case, I created this demo survey that was basically, what did you think? So that if you want to, you see this a lot at the end of workshops, people wanting you to rank it and tell you how you liked it and if it was useful, etc. With the surveys, you have some options in terms of adding images or background color. You can also decide if you want them to be anonymous or not and create a feedback statement after they complete the survey. And we'll see how this ends up looking. Just a note, to enable surveys, you'll have to go to your settings and go to in-meeting basic. And so you'll want your polls and quizzes to be added if you want to launch a poll. But then you'll want to enable your meeting surveys. And so this is where it's not so useful. You have to decide in advance what survey, and this is going to be the default survey for all your Zoom meetings. So if you're running at one time, then you'll have to remember to come back and remove this after the fact, which again is why I kind of think, you know, you could just run a survey with Zoom polls. You can also copy links to the surveys and then just paste the links to the surveys within the Zoom chat window. But I'll leave this on so we can see how that looks. So I'm going to jump over to Zoom here so we can see how this manifests itself in Zoom. So I have my alternate cell phone persona in this meeting so we can get an example here. So to launch a poll or quiz, you click polls and quizzes. You can star those that are your favorite. So especially if you have a whole library full of polls and quizzes, you might star the ones that are currently useful or relevant to you for quick access. But you can see them all here when you have them. You can launch it like you have in the past. And I can tell you on my phone, which you can't see, it looks exactly like it is here. And so I'm going to go ahead from my phone and answer these questions. So I've answered this. And so you can automatically see the answers coming up on the screen here of what I've answered. You can end the poll as you've seen in the past. You can share the results, which pulls it up for students. You can also look at the results. So When I go to download results, I get an Excel file of the polls. So here's an example from that. So this is useful again if you want to use the polls to gauge individual student understanding, or perhaps use this for participation points. So you can see the name, the time and date, you can see the answers that they put in. And so you would see this for all of your students who answered. If it's anonymous, you could see the individual results, but you just wouldn't have a name tied to them. And then you can always share the results with the class, in which case this screen ends up showing up on their individual Zoom view windows. So then the other thing, the last part is the survey. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the meeting, and the survey pops up when the meeting has ended. So I set this quick tip survey as the default, and so this is the one that will come up for participants. Again, it's not super useful unless you're kind of hosting a conference with multiple meeting rooms, but you can always use it as a kind of formative assessment for every class. And for example, what did you understand? What questions do you have? To kind of make that routine for students. When you go back to your surveys in the Zoom screen, you can see the number of responses, and then you can always view the results within Zoom. And so I took this quiz twice, and so I have you have 2 responses for that. You can also see how many people participated. You can do launch. So I launched this quiz at 2 different times. So if you have 2 different sections of a class and you're running the same poll in them, then you can look at the results for each class. You can also look at the results per respondent. You did surveys. Again, I didn't answer the survey when I launched it, but you can look at the results for this survey. You can always copy the link to the survey. So if you don't want to make the survey default for all your meetings, but still want to run a survey, you can just copy a link for it and put it into your Zoom chat like you would any other kind of survey. And that's that. I hope you enjoy these new features.